All right, everybody. It is, what is today?
16.
16th. Is it really? It is the 16th. It is a Friday, and I'm actually sitting in the airport with Caleb Williams. Did you want to be on it or no? Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you. This is Caleb. Say hi, Caleb.
Hi, Caleb.
That's Caleb Williams right there. And we're sitting in the airport, and well, I guess I'll just say it here because you'll hear on my Facebook, we were going to go on vacation and head to the sunny Florida, but unfortunately God had other plans and a storm has came, and now we're stuck in an airport. And Caleb's wife might be really sick at a hotel, and everything's canceled, and we're heading back to Salina. But let me tell you what, that is life. You kind of, I love how Caleb said it while we're in an outrageously long line, you roll with the punches. And I think it's important to always remember, and I wanted to share this. I'm saying the word "and" a lot, but I want to share this idea that he wants to interject something. He can't hear you, but hold on.
Just say that I did not say roll with the punches. Roll with it like water off a duck's back.
Is that how you said it?
Roll with it like water off a duck's back.
There you go. He said roll with it. That's so probably loud. I apologize. But as always, though, the remembrance of what we've been talking about. This is a daily time for you to spend in your word, and wherever you're at, you talk about Jesus, the opportunity to do that. And I was excited to take you guys to Florida and on the beach and talk about God, but we're going to do that in Kansas City instead. We're entering into Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 5, it begins. We just closed this off. What we saw there, that God does not always call the gifted, but He always gifts the called. And now look what He does. We're picking up in chapter 5. In chapter 5, read with me verse 1. Chapter 5, verse 1 says it's this. Now when Jesus saw the crowd, He went up to the mountaintop and sat down. His disciples came to Him, and He began to teach them. I want you to see what this is right at the beginning. Again, He does not always call the gifted, but He always gifts the called. And this is what He does. He is going to gift them. He's going to give them a message. Who is He calling? It's His disciples. Who were His disciples? We already talked a bit about that. We remember the story about Simon and Andrew, or Peter, we'll know him as later, and James and John, and all the cripples. And I mean, I don't use paralyzed. I apologize if that seems offensive, but they were sick and diseased and demon possessed. To the world, they thought them useless, but Jesus did not. Thought them as to be His disciples, and He hears them, and He does this beautiful thing of sitting down. Now, I want to put that so important. I am not a terribly smart person, not done college much, but I understand there's this position in college called the chair. It's the person in charge over a group of people in the teaching group, and that's a symbol that comes with the chair of like a certain part of the college area. What that means is that person is sitting in the authority position. And that's what we're looking at. Today, we're kind of looking a little different in churches, right? The teaching, a lot of it happens in standing. And there was a lot of meaning to this idea. If you were preaching, you would be standing. But if you were teaching, the teacher would sit. Actually, the students would stand. But the idea that He's sitting and says, I want to spend some time with you. I want to invest into you. And then that's what He does. Verse 1, it says, now when Jesus saw the crowd, He went up to the mountainside. He got to a place where they could all hear Him. And then He sat down, and His disciples came to Him, and He began to teach. Now this is what He's going to teach. For the next 3 chapters, it's the Sermon on the Mount. It's known to be one of the best sermons out there. And it's an important thing for us to study, but what He's doing is He's giving them a gift. Remember? Talked about it. He doesn't always call the gifted, but He always gifts the call. And now that they heard the call, He's going to give them a gift. We're going to look at the Beatitudes. It's the first grouping of it's going to be 11 verses adding onto it. The group of these verses are going to connect through. And we're going to only look for just a short time at verse 1, but we'll go all the way down. And the key I would say a key verse of this is verse 20. I'm going to read verse 20 as the key, and I want you to see this because we're going to re-hit this as we go through all these blessings and beatitude. We'll talk about that in a moment. But here's first at verse 20 of chapter 5. It says this, "For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." What he is doing, he is not giving them a checklist to say, if you better do these or you won't. What he's doing is saying, I want you to understand your position. And what do you mean by that? I'll show you here in the first beatitude, but that's what you got to see. You understand that it's God who has done the work. We saw all that in chapter 4. Remember when Jesus saw his disciples? He saw Andrew and Peter or Simon. He saw them. He called to them. He said, I will make you. So often we read the Beatitudes and says, well, you better act like this. This is what God is saying. I'm showing you what I will gift you, what it is to have this relationship with God. But we're going to look at the first one. The first Beatitude starts in verse 3. I'm going to just give you this one, and then the lesson's yours for the day, as it's maybe a lesson for us as we're sitting here and are waiting for our bus to head back to the hotel, to head back home in the snow or sleet and rain. It starts at verse 3 and it says this, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." It's a positional phrase, and I want you to see. We're going to talk about the word blessing for a second. That word blessing, and again, I'm not going to do the Greek thing. I want to be able to just pick the Bible up and read it for what it is. But to understand, that's a blessing. It's an excitement. It's actually, a better word could be happy. Are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, what are you saying? Well, it's a happiness to understand your position. It's the Beatitudes, right? It's the happy attitudes. And it starts with this. If you understand that God called you, if you understand that God chose you, God makes in you, God does in you, then when you get to poor in spirit, it's a comparison situation. When you understand that compared to God, you're poor. And that's amazing, because when compared to God, it's not for you to pay. It's not for you to earn. It's all God's work. So often our culture lives in this idea of with self-esteem. And I'm not against self-esteem, but what I am against is not being honest. But look, in comparison to God, we're nothing. And what's so amazing about understanding that we're nothing is we understand that He is everything. And He's making it known. Remember, back in verse 20, it says, unless you're more righteous surpasses the Pharisees, your righteousness better surpass the Pharisees, and it won't. Because God will. Such a key. And now some people might not like this phrase, because sometimes we lean the other way. A good way to almost control us to say, you better work and earn that salvation. And so I really want you to see that. And so I totally understand what we're looking at. So that's what we want you to see. In this context of that beatitude, it is the poor in spirit, the ones who understand comparison to God. And look, it's not me, it's God. That is the key to start this attitude, this happy attitude. And let's say that phrase again. Take the word blessed and put happy there. Happy are the poor in spirit. When you understand your position, there's more peace. I use it as an example, and I'm going to do it here with the video.
301.
Real quickly. I don't know what I got. I got a little pin here. Real simple context. And the context is this. Which is bigger, my head or that pen? Obviously. The pen is smaller, my head is bigger.
Yes.
But perspective, understanding position, change the reality. As you get closer to the camera, currently, look at that. The pen's the same size. As you get even closer and closer, no longer am I the focus. That's the same perspective. In the right perspective, we put God as the center of our life, then we understand we're nothing, and we find happiness in that. This is just a quick video. I want to keep reading. That's just the first blessing. We'll see what the other blessing or happiness is as you understand your position with God. I encourage you to share this. Like it if you would, but share it so that others, we can get together, daily read our Bible and keep reading and see as God speaks into your life and you understand the blessing that who He is. Have a blessed day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
7, 8.